Hey guys, Anfield here. Welcome back to what is effectively Ranger Succession Grinding Guide Take 2, since the other one was deleted by an unfortunate part of YouTube's studio, but there it is. So I've made this new one, and I've tried to be a little bit more detailed in certain aspects of this guide when it comes to the grinding, so hopefully you find that helpful. If you do have any questions, even after watching the whole video, you're more than welcome to come by the stream and ask me questions. I'm always open to that, but otherwise let's get straight stuck into it. Okay, so we're gonna look at the skill tree here. There you can see my skill tree with all my skill points in all its glory, but the succession is very cheap for skill points, and realistically you don't need all these skills right away. If you're just getting started, what I would focus on getting first is, aside from the top row at the top, I would get ultimate descending current and descending current. So those skills are kind of the most useful for sort of like low tier grind spots. The second most useful would be ultimate blasting gust in its prime. That is incredibly useful. These two abilities are going to be the ones you're going to use the absolute most. After that, I would go for extreme charging wind prime, which is, prime shotgun, succession's version of shotgun. It's very powerful, and it's a great filler skill as well, so really useful to have. After that, for PvE, you want to probably get penetrating wind. Penetrating wind you'll need to learn how to use through various animation cancels, which are flows from the pre-awakening, such as Sharp Feather and Kiss of the Wind. I have that explained in a video detailing PvP, but you can still use it for PvE, so and I'll talk about it a little bit in the video as well, so you can touch upon that. But that's pretty much it for PvE that you need initially. For end game, the next most useful ability would be Razor Wind, but also the two awakening skills, Nature's Tremble and Regeneration as well. The skills you least need for basically the skill you least need is basically probably Charging Wind. You don't really need that at all. It's a very great PvP skill, but for PvE you don't need it. For Tearing Arrow you also don't need at all for PvE really, and you don't need Blasting Gust that badly, but you can still get it. It's actually not that awful, but you wouldn't really use it that much, but it's worth getting eventually, I think. And the same with Prime Evasive Explosive Shot. PvE strictly talking, it is better than the non-prime version of Evasive Explosive Shot, the absolute version. It's not that as good in absolute, so you want to use that as well. So I'm going to demonstrate Polyforest first, simply because it is the most wide sweeping spot for most players looking at this video, whether you're a new player, returning player, you reroll to a new ranger and you want to level it without Murmok boosting or whatever. It's quite useful for that. So I'm starting off with all my accessories off, but that's still much too high AP. So I'm going to take the Kudum off as well, so that lowers that. Which is also good because it removes the monster damage the Kudum was applying. A little bit better of a demonstration. But again, this isn't scientific like I talked about before. Simply my damage, just because we have the same AP. For example, if you're a new player and you're like, oh, I have 130 AP that he's showing right now, it's not going to be the same because I have max rank skills, and that's a huge damage contribution to have max rank skills. And also, it's just simply, there's so much like different things going on. There's like Bartali bonus stats, from completing those journals and stuff. There's the fact that I'm level 63. There's the fact that I have 10 boss weapons, and obviously crystals. So there's lots of things going on there that is contributing to my damage. That's not just simply I have 130 AP, you have 130 AP or whatever. But if you are a Succession Ranger and you are, looking at like 150, 160, 170 AP, at the the sort of entry point to Polyforest, you're more than fine. It should be okay. You want to rotate a lot between basically Descending Current, which of course, when I refer to any skill in this guide, for the most part referring to the fact that they're succession variants, which are prefixed by prime. I just don't want to say prime every time, so so basically Descending Current, Ultimate Descending Current, and then Ultimate Blasting Gust are your primary abilities here that are going to do the most damage. So those are the skills that you're probably going to look to use to do the most heavy lifting. The cooldowns are not very long on Ultimate Blasting Gust, and as for Descending Current, it has it can be used on cooldown, but the damage is lowered, but it's still pretty good. So you can use that. I would also recommend that you pick up Extreme Charging Wind Prime, which is obviously the succession variant of Shotgun. It is powered up. It does a lot more damage, so it will be able to sort of fill in gaps if you need it, depending on what your AP is and how quickly you clear them already. The awakening skills themselves, you can use the Ascending Current, sorry, not Ascending Current, Regeneration and Nature's Tremble. They do have lower cooldowns than their awakening variants, which is really weird, but they do, so you can use those if you so choose. But by that point, if you're at the point where you're thinking, I think I need to throw in Regeneration and Nature's Tremble into some of these packs, maybe consider going to slightly lower grind spots. Polyforce is great to demonstrate because it does represent a wide variety of grind spots in the game for similar AP brackets. So you could do even easier spots in this that aren't, that are very similar. Nagas, Vogons, Bashams, for example. You have spots that are generally very similar to polys all over the place. Weaker spots, also Fadus, for example. But then you have like, I'll demonstrate Blood Wolves after, but you also have like Gahaz. So as promised, we're going to take a look at Blood Wolves, which is in the southern part of Drigan. It's kind of an underrated grind spot. I recommend it to a lot of people because I think it's quite underrated. You can make a decent amount of money here. So Blood Wolves is, I guess, a little bit harder than Polyforce, but the techniques you're going to use are really the same, and I can't really stress enough, Succession is just so simple. I mean, to be honest with you, the heavy lifting skills here are the same as Polyforce, which is Ultimate Descending Current and Ultimate Blasting Gust. Both abilities you can use from the hotbar. I mean, Descending Current you have to anyway, there's actually no choice. But yeah, it's Succession. So yeah, it's very easy. You can obviously do the same thing where you throw in a couple other abilities here and there if you want. What you might see me do a couple times and be wondering what the kicks are for, that's Sharp Feather, which is one of the flows to use Penetrating Wind from. I recommend that you learn it if you want to learn how to do that. I have a couple videos that touch upon it. The most recent is the Siege guide I made for Succession, so if you want to check out that video, it goes over some of the cancels you can do with Penetrating Wind, specifically referring to Sharp Feather here, that's in there, as well as another cancel that you might want to use for later spots, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So yeah, as you can see, it's relatively the same. You want to use a lot of Prime Ultimate Blasting Gust. I mean, the cooldown is very low, so you can use it every other pack basically, and then of course Descending Current can do the rest. Descending Current can be spammed as much as you like, but it does of course have a cooldown. The cooldown, however, does allow you to keep using it, but it does lower the damage a little bit, and it resets the skill. But that shouldn't be a problem if you're rotating between the packs, between Descending Current and Ultimate Blasting Gust. So yeah, there really isn't much to say here. It is very straightforward, and you shouldn't really have too much of an issue. Again, if you need to, you can always just use Shotgun. You don't actually have to use like Penetrating Wind cancels with Sharp Feather if you don't want to. I would recommend you learn how to do it, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So you can use Shotgun as filler should you need to, depending on what your AP is. But it's very, very, very straightforward. And because you're killing so many mobs, you can pretty much keep up your Z buff quite frequently, which I recommend you absorb that as much as it allows you to do so, as well as of course pop your Succession buff whenever you can. It's no brainer kind of stuff like that. You want to keep on top of it. It'll just help you be a little bit more efficient. It'll help, especially when you're using things like Descending Current when they are on cooldown. It'll help keep the damage up despite the cooldown damage reduction there. So yeah, pretty simple, and I recommend this spot if you are looking for somewhere a little bit out of the way. At the kind of AP that you can start doing Blood Wolves, you can continue to do Polyforce. It's still a good spot. It is just one of the most busiest places in the game, so keep that in mind. Okay, so moving on to Manshaums, which if you're grinding in Remastered is one of the prettiest spots in the game in my opinion. So here you can see I'm just going to take some AP off. We're actually going to go pretty low AP here, just so you get the best possible example of the Succession's kind of damage. The one thing you want to be careful with when it comes to Manshaums is that there's a lot of hills. Now, Descending Current does not apply damage correctly if you shoot below something that is on a hill. You need to be really careful. Also, Prime Ultimate Blasting Gust can miss a lot of damage or miss mobs completely if they are on a hill. So definitely something to keep in mind. You really need to be careful of terrain irregularities here because it can mess up the skills. But otherwise, as long as you're above, if you can, you will be more than fine. And just like the other spots which I showed you before, I mean, realistically, Manshaums is just looking at, the same two abilities, doing most of the legwork here with the Succession. What Why'd you guys want a guide? Anyway, so yeah, it's the same sort of abilities, and then you can obviously use the filler abilities. Manshaums is interesting because most of the mobs can be knocked down except for the Great Warriors. They're kind of a pain. They cannot be knocked down. They do an iframe jump that has a knockdown CC. They're annoying. But the other mobs can be. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could basically just run around, kill everything that's not a Great Warrior, and just let the Great Warriors foolishly try to chase you around, you know? But yeah, I mean, Manshaums is just, it's very, very simple. Just like the other spots once you have the AP to do it. It's a pretty decent grind spot, and just like Blood Wolves would be, once the Infinite Potion is added to the game, it's quite a cool spot because then you get to farm that, or one of the items that combines into that. So that's pretty cool. So it's a useful spot to know how to grind it. But yeah, pretty straightforward. You can see here, my AP is below the recommended. I mean, again, not scientific, but at least it does show that, Succession is more than capable of handling these types of mobs as well. You do have plenty of AoE with the 2 primary skills that we always talk about, and even the other abilities will do a good job for you. So yeah, just keep on top of your E and your Z buff. Yeah, keep on top of your Succession buff, and that's pretty much it. There's not really much to talk about here, and I don't really want to go on forever. So yeah, that's all you should really need here. You don't need to use Razor Wind. It's just literally about getting down attack damage with Ultimate Blasting Gust and Descending Current, really. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm just gonna very briefly touch upon Murmok. I'm soloing it here, but obviously, ideally you're in a group and that sort of thing. You have to be very careful, especially if you really do have good AP, because you will very easily kill, well, especially with the more damaging abilities, you will kill the tree if you're not too careful. So just be a little bit wary of where you're placing Descending Current, things like that. You can see that I hit this tree for quite a lot there. So yeah, it's pretty simple. You wait for the mobs to spawn, you use Ultimate Descending Current / Prime Blasting Gust. You can use Shotgun, and in this particular instance, you can actually use Razor Wind if you want as well, which will give you a forward guard, so it's okay, you can just kind of chill there, shoot the mobs, and then release Penetrating Wind, Charging Wind, then Shotgun if you want to. Again, I touch upon that in my Siege video if you want to learn how to do that. It's using a flow called Kiss of the Wind in the Pre-Awakening skill tree. But there you go. There's not much to talk about. It's pretty straightforward. You can use the Awakening abilities if you want regeneration, and Nature's Tremble if you so choose to do so. So let's talk about Aakman. Aakman is the first of these sort of bridge to the higher tier spots. It's a very good grinding spot, very good money, and sort of the first time after grinding Polyforce and things, you're grinding mobs that are not quite one-hittable, especially if you're grinding here on 230 AP, which is what I'm currently showing you with. Of course, again, it's not scientific to what your AP or your damage output might be, although it should be a little bit closer, because by the time you're getting to Aakman, you're probably looking at a little bit closer to what is best in slot. Descending Current bug, unfortunate. Aakman is pretty straightforward. It's a little bit more complicated because the mobs are not one-hittable, but it's still straightforward to grind. You're looking to knock the mobs on the floor and then apply down attack damage. Now, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but obviously Descending Current and Ultimate Blasting Gust are the 2 abilities that will do the most damage for you to knock down mobs, or just mobs in general, but knock down mobs especially. It'll apply really nice modifiers. For that, you also want to pop Giant's Elixir or Frenzy Elixir, depending. Frenzy is nice because of the HP restoration, especially because Aakman, although you may have 230 AP, you might not have a hard time getting that. You might have a harder time getting the DP to survive, which is typically around 290 plus DP before you're safe to grind. So keep that in mind, because these mobs can do a lot of damage to you, and they can knock you down, and they will kill you if you do not have the DP to survive. Fortunately for me, I have more than enough to survive these mobs, so that's fine for me, but for you, it may be more dangerous, and obviously if you're dying a lot or your crystals are breaking, whatever, it's not going to be an efficient grind, so keep that in mind. I'd also, for monster damage add-ons here, I would recommend them a lot. You can do Nature's Tremble here, which I think is 25 monster damage add-on. It's nice because its cooldown is much lower on Succession for some reason than the Awakening, so you can apply it much more often. It also has its own DP minus, and obviously it's going to do its own damage. So it's going to lower the mob's DP, do damage, and then give you monster damage if you have that add-on. So that's nice. Regeneration is also nice for knockdown on the mobs, and will of course give you attack speed as well, so that's kind of nice. But ultimately, what I would recommend is as the most basic formula is use Will of the Wind to knock the mobs down, apply a range debuff to the mobs. It does damage as well, that's nice. Will of the Wind is still quite a powerful skill, especially when it's used not on cooldown. So yeah, it's when it's used on cooldown. Sorry, when you do this, basically you'll be able to smack the mobs with a nice fat, well, usually blasting gust, I suppose, but descending current as well. If you move a little bit away from the pack, you can do that as well. It's really simple. I mean, there isn't really a whole lot to it. Aakman, when it's just a pain because the mobs are all over the place and not in tidy little packs. It's really the only reason I don't like this spot personally, but it is a very good grind spot, and you can make a ton of money here, especially when you start graduating to the spot from the lower tier spots. Okay, so moving on to Hystria, we're gonna do it with 247 AP first because I think that's interesting, because obviously people recommend Aakman with Kudum at that AP, but we're gonna do Hystria. It's just kind of like mystic territory. Hystria is nice for a number of reasons. I think it's cozier to grind because the mobs are much easier to group. They behave a lot better because of the fact that the packs are more defined, and also the mobs themselves cannot be knocked down, so they don't like fly all over the place. That's, of course, its own problem for Rangers, because that down attack multiplier is huge for us. It allows us to do a lot of damage to the mobs. Obviously, you get a huge multiplier. Well, you can do back attacks, though. Now, this is great for other classes, but not so much for Rangers and Archers, because we have what's called ranged back attacks. Even with the Awakening, which is melee, it counts as ranged damage, and so therefore it works under the same rules. So back attacks are not something we get to abuse here. Other classes, they will stun the mobs in a direction, change their direction, and then simply farm back attacks, which allows them to do it. Mystics are one of the masters at this, but other classes are very good at it as well. So this is something we can't do. We can, however, do plenty of damage to the mobs. In the old days, we used to be competitive with Will of the Wind, purely because the damage was so high on Will of the Wind, we could keep up with the other classes. And so that allowed us to be competitive. However, once that was taken away, we had nothing to really keep us up with the other classes because we couldn't do back attacks. And then came Succession. Succession is very similar to Will of the Wind in terms of just damage output. Allows us to stay competitive with other classes. So, yeah, that's really good for us. It allows us to keep up. Just like Archers are able to keep up by raw damage rather than actual multipliers. So this is something that will help us out a lot here in Hystria. Hystria is interesting because if your ability has a knockdown, such as, let's say, well, a lot of the Ranger abilities on PvE have knockdown, but let's say, for example, Regeneration. Regeneration has a knockdown. Well, you can't knock down Hystria mobs. So it doesn't, you might think it would do no CC, but instead what it does is it stuns the mob. So any ability you have a PvE knockdown, or PvP I guess as well, any ability that has that kind of knockdown on it, instead of knocking the mobs down, it actually stuns the mobs. So this is interesting because it allows you to control the packs much more easily. But it does present one problem. Descending Current is obviously an incredibly powerful ability, but it has knockdown on it, which means when you use it to group the mobs and pull the mobs towards you, they actually initially get stunned. They do take a lot of damage, so it's up to you whether you think that that's worth it or not. Personally, I'll probably still say it's kind of worth it. Even though the mobs are a little bit slower to get to you, I still think it's kind of worth it to use Descending Current because the damage is really nice, and it does allow you to achieve much higher results before the mobs even get to you. You know, it does a lot of damage. So Razor Wind, you can see I'm using there. It allows you to kind of group the mobs much more comfortably because it's got a forward guard on it, so you're not going to get CC'd or take damage while the forward guard remains. So that's useful. You should also learn how to use Razor Wind with the flow Kiss of the Wind, which I talk about again in my Succession video. Basically, it allows you to use Penetrating Wind. You always want to use Penetrating Wind from the flow. Penetrating Wind does a lot of damage itself. So this is all stuff that you want to use. I also recommend that you use Razor Wind with the Monster Damage add-on because, well, it'll apply as soon as you're basically grouping the mobs with Razor Wind. You've already applied monster damage. You can also use Evasive Explosive Shot add-on, or you can continue to use Nature's Tremble as well. So it's entirely up to you, but I would definitely recommend Razor Wind as one of them. So yeah, highly recommend doing that. And of course, you know, like usual, you want to use your Absorb. You want to use your ebuff as well. So I think actually at this point I've already taken off an accessory, so I think I'm at 230 AP right now, if I remember correctly. So yeah, you're more than enough damage. Yeah, 230 AP. So more than enough damage here, and you can try this at 230 AP if you so choose to do so. You may be able to get away with it. So yeah, it's very straightforward to grind Hystria. Don't grind in remastered, by the way. I'm doing this for the sake of the video. You should always be grinding in lower settings. But yeah, very, very, very straightforward for Rangers to do now. You know, with the succession, does allow us to keep competitive speeds with the other classes. Finally, Star's End, which is the last spot I'm going to touch upon here. It's a very nice spot for Rangers because the crystals allow you to achieve down attacks on the mobs that are then knocked down when the crystal is destroyed. So this is obviously very, very, very nice. You can see here, knockdown straight into Ultimate Blasting Gust for the damage. So yeah, very easy here. I don't actually have an elixir on, which I forgot to add. Obviously you would be fully buffed normally when you're doing this. Villa, food, and then obviously the elixir would be on, plus probably a perfume for crit. I'm not doing that here just because I'm being lazy. But yeah, recommend that you, because these mobs are much more resistant to CC, you can group the mobs with Descending Current for damage, and then when they get to you, you know, then you can start grouping them up. Here is basically very similar to Hystria minus the Crystal Edition. You definitely want to use a ton of Razor Wind here, just to try and get the mobs to, you know, have a decent amount of damage put into them when there's no crystal around. You do not want to use Razor Wind when the mobs are knocked down by the crystal, simply because Razor Wind has no knockdown damage, so that would obviously be a giant waste. But when the mobs are standing up like this, you definitely want to use a lot of Razor Wind and then use Kiss of the Wind to get Penetrating Winds damage out there as well. It makes a lot more sense to do that. I do recommend that you do throw in Regeneration and Nature's Tremble as well, especially when grouping the crystals, because it does a nice healthy amount of damage to crystals, as well as gives you attack speed and a ranged, or sorry, not a ranged, but a damage DP nerf on the mobs themselves. So yeah, it's pretty formula. You know, you just basically group the mobs with Descending Current where possible. Do not aim Descending Current towards crystals. It will kill the crystals very easily. The same with Ultimate Blasting Gust, which has more range than you might think, and can kill crystals as well. So you just want to be careful with that, because you definitely want to avoid killing a crystal before you're ready to kill the mobs grouped around it. So you want to be very careful there. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. You know, obviously Rage Absorb and all that. You know, your buff and everything, you want to use that as well. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's very efficient. It's we're one of the better grinders in Star's End these days. You know, with the best class probably being Warrior at the moment, which is crazy. You know, because we're actually very quick here, and you might think, oh, Ranger speeds, and then you know, Warrior's like, oh, but I'm 1,000 trash per hour faster than you, because damn, that class is crazy. But Ranger's still very, very good. The problem you do have with Ranger is that it will not hold the spot. If you have a duel for a spot, most classes will absolutely decimate you. You have to try and cheese duels. Do not duel in the mini arena. Try to duel in the big area of the battle arena. If you are in a server that duels for spots. In EU, everybody duels for spots. You rarely get griefed here at all. You know, everyone's pretty respectful of that. But most people are going to look at Succession Ranger and be like, easy grind spot. We're basically like the shies of today, I guess. So you do want to be careful of the fact that you're going to have to deal with that. And there isn't really much that you can do other than try and go backwards with Blasting Gust, which is pretty quick and doesn't drain as much damage anymore. Just try and do as much damage. But most classes are going to have enough, especially if there's a smart PvPer, to defeat you, unfortunately. So that is a risk you have to take to get much more higher trash than the Awakening. That being said, the Awakening is competitive to a degree with a lot of classes here still. It's like, I don't know, maybe 500-700 trash per hour less than Succession. So, you know, if you're an experienced PvP with Awakening, well, if that's true, you probably don't need this guide at all. But if you are, then, you know, you should be able to hold on to your spot against a lot of classes with that. But as a Succession Ranger, it's going to be very difficult. So, but yeah, the grinding itself, though, at least is easy. And you can see just how straightforward it really is. You know, group mobs with Descending Current to the crystals if there is a crystal. If there is a crystal, you know, I like to use Regeneration and Nature's Tremble for the 2 buffs / debuffs. And then, you know, you can do 1 Will of the Wind at least just to apply that. And then, you know, Prime Ultimate Blasting Gust will do the job for you. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful to you. And if you need anything more, like I said, just feel free to contact me on my stream. I'll link it below. But yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a very happy new year, and I'll see you in 2020.